The battle for the Formula One World Championship entering a key phase, and we're all set for a vital race. We're at Hockenheim. It's round 12, the German Grand Prix, and the commentators Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Beautiful overhead helicopter shot of the current layout, the new layout of Hockenheim. Gone the long blast through the forests. Now it's a much tighter and more twisty racetrack. And it's certainly got the feeling of a turning point about it this weekend. Michael Schumacher there, looking very, very strong indeed. Already shown in the last two races that Ferrari, together with Bridgestone, have the fastest car now in Formula One as we go through the second half of the season. Renault and Fernando Alonso there were close behind in Indianapolis and Magny-Cours, but this weekend neither Alonso nor teammate Fisichella have yet shown anything like the kind of pace they're going to need to challenge the Ferraris. And instead it was more a case of Kimi Raikkonen and McLaren yesterday in qualifying looking like the main challengers. Raikkonen taking pole position for this afternoon's Grand Prix, second year in a row here in Hockenheim. Last year he had a significant car advantage. This year McLaren still playing catch-up, but they have got a new front wing on the car amongst a bunch of other changes, and looks like a strong close to the season for the McLaren team. There is the whiff of a possibility that yesterday's pole position was partially achieved by Raikkonen having quite light fuel, and as David Coulthard was just alluding to on the grid a moment ago, a suggestion in the paddock that possibly the team made a mistake, a bit like Renault did with Alonso back in Malaysia. For those of you who watched that Grand Prix with us, you remember they put twice as much fuel in as they should have done for him in qualifying. Well, the feeling is that maybe they made a mistake with Raikkonen and didn't put enough in, and certainly that would be partially confirmed by a look at the technical delegates report, which says that they've changed the fuel sensors on Raikkonen's car, indicating that clearly there was something amiss in the information passing between the car and the refueling system. Well, Alonso leads Schumacher by 17 points with a maximum 70 still available. But if you look at this grid, you can see he really has got damage limitation on his mind here this afternoon. From 7th place on the grid, equaling his worst of the year, which was, of course, that Malaysia debacle with too much fuel in the car. Schumacher will be looking to reduce the deficit to 12 or possibly 13 points if the cards fall well for him. Great to see the two Hondas there, Button and Barrichello, well up the grid. Just rolling through, you see Coulthard there into the top 10. Another fantastic qualifying performance by him. Williams and BMW just threatening the edges of the top 10 as well. Williams having the edge, of course. On the weekend they announced a new 3-year engine supply deal with Toyota. And going to the back, hats off to everyone at Leafield in charge of Super Aguri's new car. They've brought it here this weekend and they've out-qualified both of the Midlands, and good effort for them. Jarno Trulli, you see at the back, slightly unaccustomed position for him. He had to take an engine penalty after his new Toyota engine blew up on the second lap of free practice yesterday. Now, Martin, in France, it was a question of nursing the tyres for Schumacher and Ferrari through the early phases. Here, quite a strong suggestion that there's a lot more of that got to take place today. This place can really hurt your tyres if you don't look after them properly. Yes,
they're all pushing the limits and the boundaries in terms of how soft they can run the tyres. Obviously, the softer, the more grip, the higher the wear rate. And Ron Dennis is very much saying our strategy with the McLaren, with Kimi Raikkonen, is get him out front and try and gain advantage that way. But I think it's a question of who can stop the Ferraris from winning. But I don't think Ferrari can relax until after the first set of pit stops are all completed and they can understand exactly who's doing what. I'm hearing that, in fact, that mass device dampener, sorry to bore you with all that stuff, could well be back on the Renault for Hungary. We were talking about that earlier on, James. And it's got to be key to them. They must have set that Renault up in the last few months. Every decision they've made on that car, new aerodynamic pieces, new mechanical pieces, has all been based around a fundamental setup using this device, and it must have hurt them very badly, especially now they're going into a testing ban phase for the summer. And well, can Renault minimise the damage today and keep the pressure off Alonso? Because and it's a great surprise to me, Alonso appears to be buckling slightly, doesn't he, with the pressure that's on him with the advancing Michael Schumacher. Schumacher's reliability, of course, has been absolutely sensational, hasn't it? But then so has the Renault, so we don't expect that to be an issue. But look at Alonso, he's in the middle of several cars there. He is exposed sitting on the grid, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place to start from. It's very possible to knock off a nose cone, a front wing, very easily into turn one. It's a very fast turn 1 here, one of the quickest of the year. Normally they go off the start line into quite a tight corner, but here it's 125-mile-an-hour right-hander, and they're not doing much less than that from a standing start. So anything can happen. You quite often see cars running wide as well. And Alonso has had the problems like that last year. If you remember, he started a bit further down the grid in Budapest and knocked off his front wing in a melee into the first corner. So anything can happen. That's the championship situation, as you saw. 17 points, the margin. We're riding on board here with Felipe Massa, who really has stepped up in the last few weeks. A lot of people questioning whether he was capable of doing a job as a number 2 at Ferrari. Such was his erratic driving in previous seasons, but he has matured tremendously. And said on Thursday, I really feel the pressure here. I know what's expected of me. Schumacher can't win this championship alone. He needs Massa to take points off Alonso. Go, Kimi, go, Pedro. That's the Mercedes-Benz grandstand there, out by turn 8, and they're certainly going to enjoy some good action today, I think.
Yamamoto starting his first Grand Prix in the Super Aguri then from the pit lane, and we're hearing from the grid that Michael Schumacher's on brand new tyres, Raikkonen and Massa on a used set. They will have done one qualifying run. Michael's going to need those to get down to the first corner. He's on the dirty side of the racetrack, the less grippy inside line. And a little bit of blue smoke coming out of a few cars. They are topped up absolutely to the limit with oil. Quite a high oil usage on these Formula 1 engines. Barrichello was very slow away there, holding up the right-hand side of the grid. He wasn't last away, so he can regain his position, and that's exactly where he is, look, between the 2 Renaults. Lots of energy going on then to get the tyres and brakes up to temperature. We've got a technical feature coming up at the Turkish Grand Prix to explain to you more about what they're doing out there right now and why they're having to do that.
Well, the most important form guide, obviously, is the form they carry into this particular Grand Prix over the last few races. But looking at the previous form guide at the front, Alonso won this race last year. Raikkonen has been here 5 times and has yet to finish a German Grand Prix. And it's not been the happiest hunting ground for Michael Schumacher, despite the enormous number of his fans here, all decked out in red and black, waving German flags. He's actually only won this race on 3 occasions. If you compare it to his 8 victories in France and 7 in Canada, it's not exactly sparkling by his very high standards.
Nervous moments then. We saw Kimi Raikkonen have a heat issue in the engine department behind the safety car in Monte Carlo. Now he's been on the grid over half a minute. It's well over 45 degrees out there on the track temperature, and 33 air, and the cars are boiling up sitting there.
Yeah, Raikkonen didn't really back them up much on that parade lap. It's been a year since he's been on pole. It's been a long time since he's been sitting there on the grid. 67 laps then of Hockenheim for the German Grand Prix. Begin now. Good start by Raikkonen, also by Schumacher. Button's got away well, but he's already been passed, I think, by 1 Renault. He might get passed by 2. His initial bite was good, Jenson Button, but after that, the Renaults just sailed past him. One of the BMWs running a little wide there on the exit, but Raikkonen holds the lead off the start. Della Rosa is attacking down the inside there. Jenson Button has fallen down behind the 2 Renaults then, and it looks like Barrichello's having some problems with Della Rosa. Ralf Schumacher's also mixed up.
Yeah, a lot of pushing and jostling going on there. Jenson Button said on ITV, if we're behind Alonso, then we've got to look at our start facilities, and he is at the moment, but he's steaming up the inside. He's going to take Alonso wide, and is Alonso going to get caught up with Della Rosa? Oh, and we've got a car. It's a Red Bull. It's Coulthard was flying through the air down at the hairpin, and lots of action on the first corner. Alonso getting heavily compromised. Button came back at him, and a loose front wing there for Jacques Villeneuve. Here we're going to see it. There's Button steaming up the inside. Barrichello just missed the back of the reigning world champion, and there then is Coulthard getting hit by a Toyota too. But miraculously, he carries on. It just flicks him up in the air, look, wow. And that hurts you back when you land. There's so little suspension travel, but Coulthard getting straight back on it. And we've got Williams in the wall at, where's that? On the right-hander coming into the stadium. Raikkonen leads from Michael Schumacher, Massa, Fisichella, Button. Alonso did get back in front of Della Rosa critically.
Button then up back in front of Fernando Alonso. Very brave pass by Jenson Button. We're being told by the pit crew that Yamamoto stole leaving the pit lane. That's Nico Rosberg flying off the racetrack. He was lying in 17th place, and he's gone off at turn 12. And we've got safety cars and medical cars circulating out there, but at the moment it's just a yellow flag situation.
He was overtaking a car, got wide on the way, and it's very dirty out there, and went straight across the gravel trap to the scene of the accident. Heidfeld pits, Ralf Schumacher pits, maybe it was Heidfeld that had, and Villeneuve too has pitted. So both BMWs in from first lap contact. Ralf Schumacher, we know, hit Coulthard. Ted has some news about BMW.
At BMW, it was a right rear puncture for Nick Heidfeld. The tyre completely shredded. They managed to get it off, but it's been dragging around the track, destroying bits of the floor with it. So he'll be without some downforce for the rest of the race.
Thank you for that, Ted. Button has passed Fisichella on this lap. I believe it was down into the hairpin. The Ferraris gamely trying to hang on to the back of what we think is a very light McLaren. Meanwhile now, it's then followed by Button and the two Renaults, Fisichella, Alonso. They'll be asking Fisichella immediately to release Alonso. Yamamoto stalled at the end of the pit lane, did not get up and running in the race. He has just joined right in the middle of the lead pack.
So Kimi Räikkönen leads the German Grand Prix on lap 3. His last lap, the fastest of the race so far, obviously a 17.3. Trying to make the break over Michael Schumacher. He's got just over a second on him. Felipe Massa looking pretty fast as well in third place. Then Jenson Button, who's managed to overtake both of the Renaults, having been leapfrogged by them at the start. That would indicate that Button is carrying possibly a little bit less fuel than the two Renaults. Also, he was able to just catch them a little bit off guard. And anyway, good news for Jenson to retain that 4th place, and some more thinking to be done by the Renault team. De La Rosa is in 7th place. Webber is up into 8th place from 11th on the grid, so he's had a good start. Rubens Barrichello has slipped down from 6th to 9th place, and Christian Klien is 10th, and that's Yamamoto really struggling with this new Super Aguri, looking down into the cockpit. Something's clearly not working properly, and De La Rosa is off the racetrack on lap 4 as Kimi Räikkönen does a 1:16.7, 6/10ths faster than the Ferraris chasing him, putting the hammer down Räikkönen. His teammate is off the racetrack.
That's bad news for De La Rosa. Started 10th, got up to 8th straight away, managed to navigate his way around all the first lap carnage, and looks like he's fallen off in sympathy somewhere. So it's turn 10 for De La Rosa, and actually looks more like a technical problem for him there. He's just pulled over onto the grass. He hasn't, unless he goes off a little bit later on. De La Rosa then looks like he's pulled off the racetrack rather than fallen off it. Räikkönen then, I tell you, Renault better just hope that Räikkönen, the two Ferraris, and Jenson Button are 3 stopping and they're 2 stopping, because otherwise their pace is such they're going to get absolutely smashed today.
Räikkönen leading, Schumacher 2nd, Massa 3rd. Button is holding on to Felipe Massa, though, doing a great job. Jenson Button in 4th place. Fisichella and Alonso, the two Renaults, in 5th and 6th as Yamamoto comes into the pits. Webber 7th, and Barrichello up to 8th now. You could see that Button's initial takeoff from the line was very good. His reaction time was good, but the Renaults just had much more drive. Watch the first 100 metres. Button on the left there, behind Felipe Massa. Watch the two Renaults on the right-hand side. As Button tries to pick up speed, the Renaults just go either side of him and side into turn 1. Candy from a baby.
I tell you, Jenson did so well there to be focusing on turn 1 and then have a Renault either side, and he got squeezed by one and so nearly pushed into the other. Really good mind management as he went down into there. And this is the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher. It got in way too hot. Coulthard, you just can't see the other cars with these high headrests that you've got. And Rosberg coming in too late into the right-hander into the stadium. And, well, he's having a pretty dim phase of the race season, isn't he?
He is, and it's a pretty dim weekend, actually, on a racetrack he knows well, because he raced here having grown up, German mother. Lots of German racing activity in his CV. And he threw it off the road on Friday on free practice and did hardly any running at all. So, well, it's been a pretty dismal weekend, doesn't it?
Yeah. Ralph, of course, tripped over De La Rosa at the same corner, didn't he, in qualifying, alarmingly, when they were just burning off fuel. So Räikkönen's lead then was 2.4, is now 2.4 seconds up from 2. So definitely he's got the pace on Ferrari at the moment, but he could be coming in as early as 10 laps before the Ferraris, we believe. Button is gamely just about hanging on, and now the Renaults are getting into their stride a little bit.
Yeah, the Renault starting to lap in the mid-117, same sort of pace as Jenson Button in 4th place, but a good second a lap slower than Kimi Räikkönen in front, and that has definitely got a lot to do with fuel. I think Mark Webber there, you can see the big winner off the start line. Also Liuzzi did well to get himself up into 10th place. Jarno Trulli, what a start he made from 20th on the grid up to 11th now for the Toyota driver. His teammate Ralf Schumacher, involved in that incident with David Coulthard on the opening lap, has dropped down to 17th place. So he's 6 spots behind Jarno Trulli, who started from the back. Lap 7 of the German Grand Prix from Hockenheim. We're approximately halfway between Frankfurt and Stuttgart in central Germany. Pretty warm here, 49 degrees the track temperature, 33 degrees the air temperature. And at the moment, Kimi Räikkönen, who started last year's race from pole as well as this year's race. Last year he got nothing out of it at all when he was running away in the lead. Let's see what he can get out of this year's Grand Prix. He's currently almost 3 seconds clear of the Ferraris of Michael Schumacher and Felipe Massa. Jenson Button doesn't quite have the pace of the Ferraris here this afternoon. He's had a very bold start, though. He was initially passed by the 2 Renaults. He got them back again on lap 2. He's in 4th place. Then it's Fisichella leading Alonso, his teammate for Renaults, 5th and 6th at the moment. Mark Webber is having a very strong drive in 7th. And 8th is Barrichello. What's that? Liuzzi, who had a wonderful start, just a little bit offline there in turn 1.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see behind him is as Trulli tries to do something with that. Coulthard, who's in close attendance, nails Jarno Trulli and is up to 11th place, just 3/10 of a second behind Liuzzi now. So Coulthard recovering from that altercation with Ralf Schumacher at the hairpin on the first lap. Räikkönen leads by 3 seconds over Michael Schumacher. Massa 3rd, Button 10 seconds off the lead now, but going okay. Fisichella is quicker than Alonso. What has happened to Fernando Alonso? Some discussion that Fisichella can sort of drive around the car that he's suddenly inherited this weekend with the missing pieces, and Alonso got so tuned in to the devices that he had and the opportunities he had. Why is Alonso suddenly 10th slower than Fisichella, just like he was in Indianapolis 2 races ago?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation for those of us who followed the season with us. It's very similar to Indianapolis. There's another look at Alonso and Fisichella going either side of the Honda of Jenson Button into turn 1. And Button did very, very well to stay out of trouble there. But it's the same story in Indianapolis, wasn't it? That weekend, Fisichella was the faster of the 2 Renault drivers, and Alonso just didn't really seem at the races. He's bounced back from that, and Manu Kori put in a very strong performance to overcome his handicap of lack of grip and performance in the Renault. Managed to get in front of Massa on that day. I'd really dearly love to do that again this afternoon. We're pretty sure the Renaults are running longer than the McLaren of Räikkönen or the 2 Hondas of Button and Barrichello. Well, already Barrichello is behind Alonso, so at the moment Alonso will be looking to try and finish on the podium if he can, but there's a lot of racing still to go here. Different strategies at play, and all of that we'll tell you a bit more about after we've heard from Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, just taking a look at the Renault pit wall, Martin, you're absolutely right that Fisichella is faster, and that's why there's no order from them for him to let Fernando Alonso through, and because, as you say, they're both on the same strategies, so Renault not thinking about the championship at this moment.
Yeah, and as you're reporting that, Ted, Alonso's done a lap just 6/10 of a second now slower than Fisichella, so he certainly does not have the car underneath him that he needs, and he could even come under pressure from Webber, Barrichello, and the Red Bulls behind him too.
It's interesting because you think of Fernando Alonso as being bulletproof, don't you, really? It's always been astonishing how such a young man, he was 25 yesterday, could have achieved so much in such a young, short period of time. Somehow or other, psychologically, he seems to be wobbling it at the moment. Now, we saw Pedro de la Rosa stopping mysteriously out on track on the McLaren. Let's find out. He's with Louise Goodman. Exactly what happened.
Pedro, that clearly looked like some kind of technical issue. Any idea what it was?
No, I mean, we were running very well, just sitting there behind Alonso, just trying to let the laps go by and I think something electric, because just I was on the back straight and the engine died. So I guess there was nothing wrong with the engine. I think it's something electric, but very strange because anyhow, you know, it's just we were looking good. We were very long strategy-wise. We were very quick.
What can you tell us about your teammate? He's in the lead at the moment. Everyone's expecting him to pit early. Is that the case?
Well, I don't know which lap we are in, but you better have a look.
Thanks, Pedro.
And while we were listening to Pedro, we noticed David Coulthard's dropped back behind Jarno Trulli with quite a slow lap. So sounds as if, or seems as if, he had some kind of drama out there. So it's Liuzzi, Trulli, Coulthard 10, 11 and 12 having a very, very good scrap. Another good scrap between Webber and Barrichello for 7th place, and Kimi coming in already.
Yep, this is only lap 10. It'll be the beginning of 11 if he comes in on this particular lap, and that would rather underline the fact that perhaps there was a problem yesterday for McLaren on the refueling. Before the third part of qualifying, I think they were looking to be aggressive anyway, and aggressive here would have meant something like 15 or 16 laps. Somehow or other, the sensor on the car obviously gave them the wrong information, and they only had 10 laps of fuel in the car. So that is not exactly ideal, really, for Kimi Räikkönen, and it is definitely compromised him. Renault will be interested in this. They're going for a very, very long middle stint. There was a slight problem with that, Ted Kravitz.
No, it's a standard 3-stopper. The fuel hose was off after 6 or 7 seconds, but it was a problem on the right rear tyre. Again, the same problem as they had at the last race, one of his 3 stops at the last race in France, James.
And the killer for that is that they didn't get they might as well have used the time to put the fuel in, but the fuel hose was off. It's almost worth putting it back in again, but you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how long it's going to take them to fix the problem. So that's just obliterated any advantage that they had by getting Räikkönen out there in clear air, because the way it was going to work out, he was still going to come back in, possibly ahead of the Renaults in 5th or 6th place, and it wouldn't have been too bad.
Yeah, he would have probably popped out between Fisichella and Alonso. Alonso dropping back alarmingly now from teammate Fisichella. 4.5 seconds behind Fisichella, Fernando Alonso. So he is having a very strange German Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher on home soil is the new race leader. Teammate Felipe Massa. At the moment, it's a Ferrari 1-2. 56 laps still to go here, though. So that puts Jenson Button up into 3rd place then, with the long stop of Kimi Räikkönen, now 25 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher. He had a couple of seconds advantage before he made his stop, so he has lost considerable amount. A normal period of time for him to have dropped by making a stop would be something in the region of about 18 seconds. So he's obviously lost about 7 seconds more than he would have done if things had gone normally and according to plan for him. 2 Ferraris out front, Button 3rd, Fisichella 4th, Alonso 5th, Webber 6th for Williams. Love to score some points. It's been a barren spell for them. Barrichello 7th in the second Honda. 8th is now Räikkönen. Let's have another look at what happened in this pit stop. Watch the rear, right rear corner. Very slow getting the wheel nut back on again. Big delays. Not happy that the nut was threaded. Yeah, very deflated mechanic raising his arm to send him on his way, knowing that 7 or 8 seconds had gone down the toilet.
Even with that, though, James, he's up behind Barrichello in P8, so he's still got a chance of a reasonable haul of points today. He's got a lot of work to do, though, and of course the big problem is now got to pass traffic, hasn't he? He's going to be behind cars. He should not have been anywhere near with what must have cost him. What was the pit stop? 8 seconds, the deficit, the amount of track time it cost him.
Yep, I reckon it was about 8 seconds. Villeneuve in the BMW is still out there in 18th place, having had to stop with a broken nose on the opening lap, but it looks like Heidfeld has retired from this Grand Prix, so it's been a miserable weekend for BMW Sauber. And now you can see Räikkönen tucked up behind Webber and Barrichello. And these guys are circulating in the mid-118s, which is the sort of pace. A good second slower than the cars up front. Lap 14 of the German Grand Prix in Hockenheim. Kimi Räikkönen led this one from pole position for the first 10 laps, but then he had to come in and make his first pit stop. So that's a little earlier than ideal for a three-stopper, and what was less than ideal for Räikkönen was that the right rear wheel nut stuck. He lost 8 seconds by our calculations over and above what he would have done by making the early stop. So that's compromised him, but even worse for him, as you can see, he's come out behind the battle between Mark Webber in the Williams in 6th place and 7th place Rubens Barrichello. Now these guys are lapping in the mid to high 118s at the moment, whereas the pace Räikkönen was on before and that Michael Schumacher is now on in the lead is a high 116. So a second and a half a lap slower than the leaders, and that's certainly costing Kimi Räikkönen at the moment. The strategy, as Ron Dennis had it painted out, of running in clear air for most of the Grand Prix has been badly compromised. Schumacher leads, Massa second, just less than a second behind his team leader. Button third, Fisichella substantially faster today and all weekend really, but particularly today. And teammate Alonso, the World Championship leader, is in trouble here. He's running 5th, lapping in the high 118s, almost a second a lap slower than his teammate.
And I tell you what, he's now only 1.8 seconds ahead of Webber, Barrichello and Räikkönen. The recovering Räikkönen behind him too. So Alonso is in danger of barely scoring any points today. I mean, somehow they managed to pickpocket Ferrari 2 weeks ago at the French Grand Prix, get him up to second, but he's got no pace at this phase of the race anyway on this set of tyres. Alonso, I suspect, will be very ready to take a fresh set of tyres and maybe a twist of front wing one way. There's the pack I was telling you about, beginning to come up behind him. Räikkönen, I would imagine his spirit has been dampened by having run so well. And of course, when he was leading the race, anything he came up behind in the early few laps, they got blue flag. They had to jump out of their way before they passed 3 marshal posts with blue flags. Suddenly now, Räikkönen's got a face full of traffic, and they don't have to move out of the way any longer. He's racing them for position.
Well, Alonso is now falling into their clutches. He has been losing pretty much 2 or 3 tenths every sector on this lap, and they're going to catch him pretty quickly. And I guess Alonso will be hoping that the second set of tyres he takes on in about, we reckon, about 5 laps from now at his first pit stop will be better for him than the ones he started this Grand Prix on, because these tyres aren't working for him. Is it more than that, though? Is it more than just tyre balance? Riding on board with Kimi Räikkönen in 8th place down the long straight here. Well over 120,000 people here today at Hockenheim. And those are the tyres. I was talking about Renault getting tyres ready. And well, let's hope these ones are better for Alonso than the ones he's got at the moment. There he is, you see, they're catching him now. The World Championship leader under real pressure.
Doesn't appear to have an answer. I think Räikkönen must have made a mistake on the previous lap, or he's got a gremlin creeping in. He was very, very slow. He was lapping in the 16s when he was leading the race. Now he's back in the 90s, falling off the back. Barrichello goes for the jugular with Webber down at the hairpin, makes it stick, hangs him out to dry on the outside. Webber can only get his tyres in the dirt, and Barrichello, a beautifully executed move, and no response there. No, he's not able to come back at him. Once Rubens hung him out to dry, he had the position.
Yeah, that's one of the new corners designed by Herman Tilke, who is Bernie Ecclestone's favourite circuit architect, the man who's built Shanghai, Istanbul, Bahrain, etc. And he's the one who modified this Hockenheim circuit from the long straights. Jenson Button pits from 3rd place on lap 17 of this Grand Prix. So he too, we think, on a 3-stop strategy. Anything less than about 7.5, 8 seconds. No, well, that could be switched to a 2. Time will tell. But anyway, this hairpin that Herman Tilke has built into this circuit, an absolutely wonderful passing place, because it comes at the end of a long straight that onto which is a slow corner, and that's exactly the holy grail really for overtaking. Slow corner, long straight, slow corner. Where has Button rejoined? Behind Kimi Räikkönen. So he's come back out in 8th place behind this battle. Alonso, Barrichello, Webber, Räikkönen.
That's bad news for Button. He was in a sort of a net 3rd place really, but Räikkönen's managed to recover. This is a replay of Barrichello with a textbook overtaking move. Almost caught Webber out by a little bit by surprise there, I think. and a little bit rude on the exit, but perfectly legal. And this is, I think, why we saw a slow lap from Kimi Räikkönen, just sticking a wheel on the dirt. And Louise has found BMW driver Nick Heidfeld.
Nick, not much of a race for you. Tangle up on the first lap, and then what's the problem that's caused you to stop?
Yeah, obviously I had a tire problem on the rear right, and I think that destroyed some things on the brake side. The brakes got longer and longer. We checked it, but it was not safe to continue.
When you say you had a tyre problem, was that caused by the incident on the first lap or something totally different?
No, I think it was an incident in the second corner. I overtook quite a lot of cars on the outside, and then had a kick on the back of the car. Not sure who it was, but it's quite likely that it was Jacques, because he had a problem on the front wing, but it's difficult to see behind.
Thanks.
Now then, here's Rubens Barrichello coming on the back of the World Championship leader, Fernando Alonso. Currently running in 4th place, Alonso, but Barrichello looking very racy. This is the hairpin where he managed to pass Webber a minute ago. Can he get him under braking? Certainly braking is one of the great strengths of the Renault. It was when they had the mass dampers on the car. Very stable car under braking, allowed them to pass people and not be passed by other people. Without that system on the car this weekend, it's difficult to know whether to overstate it or not, or whether one is overstating how important the loss of this system is to Renault, but certainly they are off colour on the very weekend that this system, which they had really perfected, is banned.
You've got to assume if Rubens on a similar strategy to his teammate, he'll be pitting shortly, which will take a bit of pressure off Alonso. But Rubens needs to pass him. His teammate has pitted, yet is still on the same piece of racetrack, on the same straight as him. Button is cruising up behind them, following Räikkönen then up to this pack. Alonso is in desperate trouble. Räikkönen P7 at the moment, having had that lengthy stop. Barrichello does indeed pit.
So from 7th place, Rubens Barrichello dives in, to be received by the Honda guys. Thoughts going out to the family of Chris Mays, one of the Honda crew who were injured in a motorcycle accident, and I know his family appreciate all the support they've had from everyone in Formula One. It's a very, very difficult time for that family. And out onto the track again comes Rubens Barrichello, having been very well looked after by the Honda mechanics. What can he achieve this afternoon, and what can Jenson Button achieve? He's definitely in the hunt for a podium here. It's between him, Fisichella and Räikkönen, really, I think, for that final podium place. Long way to go in the Grand Prix yet, though. The Ferraris have got to finish. Barrichello on fire! The rear of the Honda is on fire. Get out quick, Rubens. In the pits, Felipe Massa, lap 20, from 2nd place. Can he get back out in front of Fisichella in the Renault? He doesn't need to worry about that, because Fisichella has dived in the pits as well. So Massa will rejoin in 2nd place.
Fisichella doing a solid job this afternoon. Button has cleared Kimi Räikkönen, so Jenson Button ahead of Räikkönen now. And Räikkönen doing a 1:21, a very slow lap.
Down the pit straight comes Jenson Button. Has he leapfrogged Giancarlo Fisichella? Yes, he has. Fisichella is going to come out behind this battle. He's going to come out behind Räikkönen. Christian Klien, I think, has just got past him as well. So Fisichella drops back in to 8th place, and Jenson Button is well in front of him, as he was in the opening phase. So strategy-wise, it's looking good at the moment for Honda. Ferrari ready for Michael Schumacher, the race leader. End of lap 20. They're quite short laps here at Hockenheim, 1:17 for a quick one. In he comes then, chasing after the World Championship, which seemed forlorn hope a few months ago, but now he has a real feeling, he and the team, they can win this year's World Championship, particularly with Alonso on this kind of form.
Stopped a lap after the Renault too. Textbook pit stop there, and it looks like they're getting ready for Alonso in the background. So Alonso's got no more fuel than his main competitors for the championship, so he is just plain struggling this afternoon. Michael Schumacher feeds out just in front of Felipe Massa, who surely has got no idea that he's going to have a stab up the inside and doesn't do so. And I don't think that would go down too well with the employers. There is Alonso. Ted is down there.
I'll tell you what, they only just pulled the pin out on Michael Schumacher's right rear tyre as well, but let's see what changes. They're actually taking off front wing from Fernando Alonso while they pit him. A good stop, though, nice and quick, and shorter middle stint than the sister Renault Fisichella. 8 seconds for Alonso.
Yeah, bang on target for a 2-stop strategy. He'll be in again around about lap 44. of this Grand Prix, but where is he going to feed back out into the pack? He's certainly well behind the battle between Raikkonen, Klein, Fisichella.
He's fed in 9th. He's just ahead of Liuzzi and Coulthard. So took some front wing off. He obviously had oversteer, too much front grip. They've wound a little bit of that off. Another set of tyres. Let's see if he can find some pace now and haul himself back up. But Alonso really struggling in this Grand Prix. A full tank of fuel, a heavyish load, two-stop load. So the Toro Rosso and the Red Bull behind him will be lighter. And this is Michael Schumacher just squeezing out of the pits in front of Felipe Massa as the BMW Villeneuve gets clean out of the way.
It's interesting, isn't it? Massa's been pretty quick the last few races, and Michael Schumacher's felt the need to bang in a fast lap towards the end just to show that he had all the speed all along if he wanted it. But Massa is definitely keeping him honest, isn't he? He's definitely working there for Michael Schumacher to win the World Championship. But there's no question he has the speed in this Ferrari, and it's a very impressive performance, this, by Felipe Massa. There they are then, 1 and 2 at the moment, the Ferraris. And a word for Mark Webber. We saw him earlier on being passed by Rubens Barrichello, but the Williams is still out on track, yet to make its first pit stop here this afternoon. He's 18 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher, but if he keeps going for much longer, he's going to play himself into contention for a decent points haul. David Coulthard pits from 11th place. He dropped off a bit after that early battle with others. Of course, he did flip up in the air off the wheel of Ralf Schumacher, and that's set him back a little bit on the opening lap.
That's a wonderful feeling when you've got hot tyres like that and you just floor the throttle. The grip is an acceleration. It's just mind-blowing, and the scenery starts rushing past the corners of your eyes. It's a wonderful feeling of power and grip and control. And when we're on board, there's Coulthard lights it up back onto the racetrack. Schumacher leads by 1.3 seconds now. Webber's third, as you say, James, yet to stop. But looking good for Jenson Button, fourth at the moment. His stop out of the way. His pace solid, if unspectacular. Webber crosses the line another time, doing a 1:18.0. So good times from Mark Webber.
I tell you what, though, the pace of the Ferraris on this phase of the Grand Prix is absolutely awesome. They're lapping in the mid-116s, and the best that Button and Raikkonen can manage is the mid-118s. Rubens Barrichello, there he is, and Louise Goodman is standing by waiting to talk to him. Take it away, Lou.
Hot moment for you, Rubens.
Yeah, well, it's we had one of the best cars out there, obviously. You could see from there. Had a terrible start. We need to revise all the effort we make to go the car to get the car faster. We lose it on the start, and then it was just running behind. I was having a good race, probably the first one where I was really competitive in the car, and unfortunately the engine expired.
So that was what caused that fire?
Yeah.
Thanks, Rubens.
Yeah, both Hondas mugged down to the first corner. Button being passed from fourth on the grid by 7th place man Alonso down into turn 1, and did very well not to run into the two Renaults down there that caught him very much by surprise. Looking at Fisichella, currently running 7th. Ahead of him he's got Klein, who's yet to stop, and Webber. But I'm sure later on, if they're running line astern, even if they're seconds apart, they're going to have to move Fisichella out of the way and give Alonso another point or two if they can. But we saw this kind of scenario back in Indianapolis 2 races ago. Trulli was in between the two Renaults. They couldn't really move Fisichella out of the way. And at the same time, Fizzy's third in the World Championship. There's an onslaught coming, particularly from Felipe Massa, so he's got to think of himself as well. But at the moment, Renault in desperate trouble with Fernando Alonso.
They certainly are, and Mark Webber, I think, has got enough in his pocket now to be able to make a pit stop and come back out in front of Alonso. So he's not just got to worry about the Ferraris, about Jenson Button and Kimi Raikkonen. He's got to worry about the Williams as well. Alonso has a mountain to climb here at Hockenheim to hold on to his substantial championship lead. It's going to get whittled right down here, I think. Schumacher and Massa leading the way. Webber still third for Williams. So there you can see the Midland of Christian Albers being passed by Ralf Schumacher, who got caught up with David Coulthard on the opening lap and lost a lot of ground there as a result. Fighting his way back from 17th place then, Ralf Schumacher. He's up to 13th so far. Teammate Jarno Trulli in the points. Single point, 8th at the moment. On line 4, but he might do better than that. He started with a very heavy car from the back of the grid. He's done that before this season, and it's worked out fine for him, and it looks like he's trying to do it again here this weekend. He's in front currently of Fernando Alonso by 7 seconds, but of course he has got to make a pit stop at some point. But keep an eye on Jarno Trulli. That Toyota's quite a fast car, and as you can see from the pace of the Ferraris and Webber's Williams out front, the Bridgestone is definitely the tyre to be on today.
Yeah, by some margin, even more so than we expected as the race unfolds. Ralf Schumacher then putting a move on Scott Speed to take over 11th place. Ralf, who tampered with Coulthard down at the hairpin on the first lap, you have to say, it looked pretty much as if it was all Ralph's fault. Now he's on a recovery drive.
Alonso outside the points at the moment, then in 9th place. Liuzzi is 10th. 11th, Scott Speed. As into the pits comes Christian Klein, who had climbed up to 7th. He got himself well and truly in front of teammate Coulthard as a result of Coulthard's problems on that opening lap. So Klein needs a good run here this weekend to get himself a seat for next year, either staying with Red Bull or finding one somewhere else on the grid, proving his credentials. He rejoins, and I imagine he will slot in probably between Liuzzi and Ralf Schumacher in 10th place. Lap 27 of this 67-lap German Grand Prix. 2 Ferraris out front, but the driver of the day so far, undoubtedly Mark Webber, has been doing personal best lap time after personal best lap time. This is a wonderful performance by Webber, who has yet to make his first pit stop. He's 19 seconds behind the Ferraris, 4 seconds in front of Jenson Button, who is still running in 4th place. But Webber, when he makes his stop, is probably going to rejoin around about, but he's trying to get out in front of Giancarlo Fisichella. He's going to try and get back out again in 5th place. That would be quite something from an opening stint for Mark Webber and Williams, who seem to be toning things around slowly. It's definitely a day to be on the Bridgestone tyre, as Liuzzi for Toro Rosso pits, put a new set of Michelins on. The Bridgestones on the Ferrari and on Webber's Williams are working very, very well indeed. They're a good bit quicker than everybody else. Button, the fastest of the Michelin runners at the moment. But watch out for Jarno Trulli in the 2nd Toyota. Started on 20th place on the grid with a very heavy car. He's on the Bridgestone tyre, and he's fought himself his way up into 7th place at the moment. This is an intriguing Grand Prix with a lot more twists and turns to come.
I think Ferrari are coasting at the front as well. They're nowhere near their full potential. And if they carry on at this pace, if they don't back off towards the end of the race, they're going to lap Fernando Alonso. Michael Schumacher will lap Alonso if the paces stay as they are at the moment before the end of this Grand Prix.
Well, there will be a big inquiry, I think, at Enstone after this weekend. They were saying yesterday in qualifying they just lacked grip, but they've lacked speed throughout the weekend as Rubens Barrichello goes back to talk to the main men at Honda. Wadasan, the man on the left, Safnauer in the middle, and Nick Fry on the right-hand side, the team principal of Honda. And I think Rubens is right to be unhappy about the starts. That's a little replay of what happened to Barrichello with a little fire earlier on. But both Hondas were slow off the line, weren't they, Martin?
Yeah, that's I think rather than an engine failure, could be bits and pieces could have come out of the side of the motor. But that looks like an oil hose or something has come undone. The oil getting on his back tyre, spinning off and immediately catching fire. Scott Speed pitted, he was in P13.
So he'll drop back behind teammate Liuzzi into 15th place. Into the pit lane comes Mark Webber's Williams. The other one is out of the race. Nico Rosberg crashed for the second time this weekend in the opening phase of this Grand Prix, so he's no longer in it. But Mark Webber has done 6 consecutive laps of personal best lap times. Fantastic performance. He comes in at the same time as Kimi Raikkonen, who, despite a long first stop, was short-fueled, and it was unfortunately a sticking wheel nut for Raikkonen. His strategy a bit compromised there, but he gets out behind Mark Webber. So a bit of activity, a flurry of activity on lap 29 here.
So Webber went twice as far as Raikkonen then, effectively. As Raikkonen's second, presumably scheduled stop, which is amazingly early. But anyway, and the two Toyotas then line astern on the racetrack. Where's that going to be? Down in 10-11.
Yeah, no, Trulli slots in 9th with Ralf Schumacher in 10th place. So chance of some good points here this afternoon for both of the Toyotas. There's a big lock up there by Christian Klien in 8th place. So that's how far they are off a World Championship point at the moment. Now, McLaren told us before the race that they told Steve Ryder, Ron Dennis did, that he thought most people would be 3-stopping here this afternoon. That certainly is not the way things have turned out. Kimi Raikkonen clearly is, but not too many others are copying them. Ted Kravitz has some news for us on McLaren.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There was no problem with that stop whatsoever. The right rear went on fine, and the fuel amount was just over 7 seconds, which is exactly what the first one would have been had they not had the problem. So Kimi on the standard 3-stopper, but as you say, looks like the only one today.
Yeah, well, it's going to compromise him. Certainly gives Button a great chance of a podium. And Fisichella too should be somewhere in there. Mark Webber with those Bridgestone tyres has got to be threatening too as the second half of this race unfolds. It's just a question of can Alonso just score a few points this afternoon. At the moment he's not under too much pressure from behind with Klien, and it depends how fast the Toyotas are, James, towards the end of the race. Ralf Schumacher then pitting. Of course, he tripped over Coulthard on the first lap and compromised himself badly, so he's got a recovery drive going on now. And he's now a lap down.
Well, Button pitted on lap 16 and took on 8.9 kilos, about 26 laps worth of fuel. So that will take him to the early 40s. It's going to be quite tight between Button, Fisichella and Webber, I think. Alonso at the moment not really in it. He is lapping in the low 1:18s, down in 6th place. And he's got both Ferraris, Button, Fisichella and Webber in front of him. And he's going to have his work cut out, I think, to change that situation. He's just under a second behind Webber, and Webber has just taken on new tyres, of course. So let's have a look at that situation, because Webber will have a heavier car. Interesting to see what Alonso can do about it. Riding on the front wing there of Felipe Massa as the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher comes out the pit lane.
Yeah, Ralf luckily noticing that the Ferraris were there, presumably his team telling him as well. He could have cut over to the left much earlier, chose not to, because the Ferrari, I can't emphasise enough how hard it is to see what's going on behind you in a Formula 1 car. Those big headrests coming alongside, your peripheral vision, your actual peripheral vision is virtually zero. Little tiny mirrors that look a little further than over your rear tyres. It is so easy to just move across, like you do, you know, sometimes you get blind spotted on a motorway where there's something beside you, just out of the field of vision of your mirrors, and you move over and you're just amazed to find something there. It's so easy to do in a Formula 1 car.
And of course, in a Formula 1 car, you're travelling probably twice the speed you would on a motorway. It's happened twice this weekend to Ralf Schumacher. He managed to collide with Pedro de la Rosa yesterday in qualifying, and again on the opening lap of this Grand Prix, he collided with David Coulthard. On the weekend that Ralf Schumacher becomes the second most experienced German in Formula 1, overtaking Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Now, what's going on here?
It's Button with his hand in the air saying, get this back marker out of my way. He's not obeying the blue flags. And now he goes through. So Jensen, obviously aware that he's got a chance of a good result this afternoon, he knows full well he can't lose half a second anywhere.
No, he's up against some very stiff competition, is Jensen Button. They've made improvements in all areas of this car over the last couple of months. The Honda team, they've been working hard on the engine, which was not quite top level in the early part of the season. They've done a lot of work on the electronics as well, and on the aerodynamics, and generally just basically on the balance of the chassis. One of the problems that Honda have had all season is this is a difficult car to set up. It's not particularly user-friendly, and quite often Barrichello goes a conservative route Jenson Button forced to go an experimental route, and that's one of the reasons why he's getting himself into trouble. We're riding on board with Thiago Monteiro, who uses all of the curb and then a little bit more on the exit of turn 12, and we're being told by the stewards that Ralf Schumacher is under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. So a collision with Coulthard on the first lap, and now a potential drive-through penalty. Let's hear what the radio says.
I'd like you to trim your TC up.
Big crash at the last corner. Jacques Villeneuve, who's had a troubled weekend and a troubled race, lost his nose cone on the opening lap. Looks like he's gone off quite big time. Down at turn 17. The final corner onto the pit straight. That's a weird one, that.
Yeah, you don't often see the cars. That looks very much like some kind of suspension failure to me, because he had the car turned in and it just suddenly changed direction. He was involved in some first lap shenanigans, wasn't he? So, and already had his nose taken off. So maybe some suspension damage that's finally showed itself by pitching him straight into the wall. Did not look like driver error. May have been driver error that caused damage earlier on, but it wasn't driver error, I think, that stuck him in the wall.
Double retirement then for the BMW team. Second in 3 races for them. It happened in Indianapolis as well. So after scoring quite a lot of points in the middle part of the season, this second half of the year is not proving too great for him at the moment. On board then with Jenson Button. A lot of people down in Frome in Somerset, where Jenson comes from, will be watching this with us, I'm sure, in the pub. And Jenson is pushing very, very hard, looking for his second podium of this rather disappointing 2006 season. Let's enjoy the ride.
Sounds like a box of nuts and bolts, doesn't it, from here when you start coming down the gearbox, all the rattling going on behind. Funny enough, it sounds different sitting in the car, so more linear noise, a nicer noise with your earplugs and crash helmet on, and you can't hear so much of this engine intake noise as the camera can perched up on the top of the airbox. But Jenson, with his ever fluid driving style, still comfortably P3, 7 seconds ahead of Fisichella, and Louise has found Nico Rosberg.
Nico, who would clearly like to have done well in his home Grand Prix. That wasn't in the script, was it?
No, not really. It's disappointing because looking at the race on TV, you know, it looks so much fun, and the car looks nice to drive for Mark also today. He's doing a great job again, and so it's very disappointing that I'm not able to take part anymore, but that's just the way it is, and I'm not really sure what happened. I lost the rear very quickly. I didn't really feel it coming, so we'll just have to have a look. It's probably in the end it's my fault that I probably overdid it, wanting too much, you know, in the first lap, and we'll have to see.
Like you say, it's a quick package. What do you think Mark can do with it out there?
I don't know. I haven't followed. In the last time I looked, he was 3rd, but he still had to stop. So I think he can do very well, maybe 5th or something, and that would be fantastic. That would really be good for the team.
Thanks, Nico.
Tough times for Nico Rosberg. If ever he needed the wise old head of Dad, Keke Rosberg, then it's now. And Keke says, he didn't often talk to me, but I suspect at the moment he will be, because he's really got to turn that around. He's having a terrible time, isn't he? And sometimes he's such a nice lad, Nico. I feel he's too ready to lash himself, but I have to say it did look like he dropped it.
Well, Williams scored no points in the last 6 Grand Prix. It's their longest barren spell for 20 years, and they're desperately hoping that Mark Webber can get something out of this afternoon's Grand Prix. He currently lies in 5th place, as you can see, a couple of seconds in front of Alonso. It was just under a second a couple of laps ago, so he's pulling away from Alonso at the moment, and from Raikkonen, who is a further 4.5 seconds behind on a compromised strategy here this afternoon. I just wonder, though, looking back at Nico Rosberg, he was the champion of GP2 last year, of course, came in on a big crest of a wave to Formula 1 this year. Will the struggle he's having at the moment, do you think that will affect in any way decisions regarding Lewis Hamilton, who's currently leading GP2? Do you think people will say, actually, you know, perhaps you need a bit more time than just coming in as a GP2 champion? Perhaps you need to test first?
It's my experience, and I've seen it over 20-odd years, and Lewis Hamilton will win Grand Prix. They don't need to rush at it. There's no point in burying him with too much pressure and expectation. But sometimes you also have to take your chances when they're there, so it's a difficult call. But we've seen so many young guys come in, look fast, and then when they get onto the treadmill of the Formula 1 season, it just becomes too much too soon. Ralph, just to confirm how much the Ferraris are backed off now, Ralph's caught them in his Toyota, but to having tampered with Coulthard in the first lap and had an early pit stop, he then was speeding on the exit of the pits and has a drive-through penalty, so to yet further compromise Ralf Schumacher's afternoon. Louise has found Jacques Villeneuve.
That was a big one, Jacques. What caused it?
The car, since we changed the nose, the car was very oversteering. Every second corner was sideways and got caught out there.
So not the result the team would have liked at their home Grand Prix?
No, too bad. The start itself went well, and then exited wide of turn 1 and got sandwiched into turn 2, and nothing I could do.
Any damage to yourself?
I'm all right.
Good stuff.
So Schumacher leading from teammate Massa by 2 seconds, but any one of 2 or 3 men could finish with them up on the podium here this afternoon. Button, Fisichella, Webber, Alonso, Raikkonen, all quite close together. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and Christian Klein a little way back in 8th place.
It's Fisichella now that's struggling of the 2 Renault drivers, the man back in the late 1:18. And surprisingly, Alonso's just put in his fastest lap of the race, as if he's finally coming alive and feeling the car underneath him. Giano Trulli, and it looks, and he's very close behind Klein. Coulthard in the sister Red Bull, 11 seconds down the road.
Yeah, that incident on the first lap for David Coulthard certainly cost him, flipping up into the air over the front wheel of Ralf Schumacher. Michael Schumacher looking very comfortable, isn't he, on lap 38. As we enter the second half of this Grand Prix, teammate Felipe Massa doing what he needs to do in second place. He's well clear of Jenson Button, though, half a minute clear of the Honda driver. Such is the superiority of Ferrari here this afternoon, and they are on more or less the same sort of strategy as Honda. Schumacher stopped 4 laps later. Massa stopped 3 laps later than Jenson Button, and put in a similar sort of amount of fuel. So nothing vastly different in the way that they're going in racing, just the sheer pace of the Ferrari keeping them ahead of Button. But it's working out nicely for Jenson at the moment. He's got an 11-second cushion over Giancarlo Fisichella.
Fisichella's going to be under pressure. Look now how close Alonso is to him, and in between them is Mark Webber, and that's critical. They cannot afford to have anybody in between them if they're going to do a swap later on. But also, Fisichella is just playing slow at the moment, as Alonso was in the first phase of the Grand Prix. Mark Webber looks like he's on for a 4th place today.
Absolutely right. They're all on the same sort of strategy, those guys. Webber ran a little longer, though, so he's got more fuel, but the Button, Fisichella and Alonso all on more or less the same sort of plan, so it's a direct fight between them. The second half of the German Grand Prix here at Hockenheim. Michael Schumacher and Felipe Massa out front, half a minute clear of Jenson Button, but it's an intriguing scrap here. Button and Fisichella and Alonso are all on more or less the same sort of tactics as Mark Webber dives down the inside of Giancarlo Fisichella. That is a pass for position, and Webber in the Williams up now into 4th place. Renault are really struggling here this afternoon. They haven't had pace really throughout free practice or qualifying, but we thought they'd be a bit quicker than this in the race. They are now 5th and 6th, in touch with the cars in front, but not in touch with Jenson Button, who is on for a podium place here, and he's 12 seconds up the road. Here's the move.
Great move from Webber, and also on the Bridgestone tyres, of course, as the leading 2 Ferraris are, but that was from a long way back. or almost from Giancarlo, as if he was expecting it. And he'll be under pressure now from Fernando Alonso, and they can't mess around playing games with each other, because Kimi Raikkonen is only just 3 seconds behind them. Sato retires for Super Aguri, but Renault have got to release Alonso now, because Fisichella is struggling badly for pace, and he has to get him through right now.
Well, amongst all the talk that goes on in the paddock about who might go where for 2007, obviously everyone waiting to see what Michael Schumacher's going to do, where Kimi Raikkonen's going to end up. If Raikkonen doesn't go to Renault, is beginning to seem quite likely. They've got to think about who they're going to put alongside Giancarlo Fisichella. They could go with test driver Heikki Kovalainen, who maybe another Alonso, or maybe he won't. The other thing they could do is put another Flavio Briatore-managed driver in that team, and that is a man called Mark Webber, who's just side past one of their cars. I'm sure Webber wouldn't mind a Renault driver, currently with Williams, who are very keen to keep him for next year. But this performance by Webber will certainly not be doing any harm to his job prospects for next year. He's in 4th place then, trying to catch Jenson Button, but Button is quicker today, and Button looking pretty good for a podium, as into the pit lane for the 2nd time this afternoon comes Fisichella.
Well, that solves Alonso's problem, because Raikkonen is now just 1.7 seconds behind. Fisichella comes a little bit hot into the pit garage. Everybody has to just back off and come back in. It costs you half, 3/4 of a second if you do that. And away he goes. Solid enough stop, though, by the Renault team. And I would imagine he seemed like he had some kind of balance problem, as Alonso did in the first phase of the Grand Prix. Now there's a very, very good fight developing between Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen. Webber, though, is through and gone.
Fisichella feeds back in 9th place, behind Jarno Trulli and Christian Klien. Into the pits comes David Coulthard from 10th place. He was involved in an incident on the opening lap with Ralf Schumacher. Poor old Coulthard started 9th on the grid, but that incident with Ralf certainly cost him. This is Coulthard's 2nd stop of the afternoon, and almost certainly his, well, definitely his final stop. Fisichella won't stop again either, but it's very close in the midfield between Webber, Alonso, Raikkonen and Fisichella. Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, Jenson Button coming into the Honda pit right in front of me. There already, he hits his marks very well, but wow, I mean, is he in it for a battle with Mark Webber now? And Honda, no, Jenson is just creeping on his marks. That's quite a long fill. Oh, he's slow away. Absolutely lights the tyres. He manages to get out, but well, Webber is the danger man for Jenson now.
It all seemed a little bit panicky from where we were standing. I don't know what was going on there, and that is simply Raikkonen lapping a Montero, and there does appear to have been a Midland in the way quite a lot this afternoon for a number. We saw Jenson Button with his fist in the air earlier on, and now we see that Montero's under investigation for ignoring the blue flags, and indeed has a drive-through penalty for the same offence.
Yeah, not been a great weekend for the Midland team. They haven't had the sort of pace they've had in recent races. Here is Raikkonen going down the inside of him. And Jenson Button came out behind Kimi Raikkonen. So, as Ted was pointing out, it wasn't the greatest getaway of all time by Button from the pit stop. They obviously got a problem getting the car moving from a standing start, whether it be off the start line or away from a pit stop. It's something Honda clearly need to work on. And it's meant that he comes out behind Kimi Raikkonen.
Raikkonen's got to stop again, so Jenson's still very much on target for a podium this afternoon. And Louise has further news.
Yeah, and down at the Super Aguri garage, they had high hopes for their new car, which made its debut here, the long-awaited SO06. But it's been a bit of a baptism of fire. Big problems for Yamamoto at the start of the race. It took him a while to get going, and he didn't last for very long before retiring with a drive shaft failure. And Sato is now out as well. His gearbox is packed up.
That's Fisichella. Fisichella went, I don't think he's slowing for a mechanic from him. He just got it all wrong in the final corner, and cleaning his tyres up now. He got a little bit deep, crossed over the line that becomes the drag racing strip, which must be lethally slippery out there. We saw already when Jacques Villeneuve went off on the outside there. I think Fisichella, that was just a pure driving error, and he's lost quite a lot of time now.
It's interesting, it's 2 seconds he lost in that final sector as a result of that mistake in the final corner. It's very difficult to evaluate what a mistake by a Formula 1 driver actually costs in terms of time on the stopwatch. But it was, in fact, that particular incident was 2 seconds lost right there. And you can see Fisichella just swerving the car up to get the bits of dust and dirt off the tyres, clean them up as quickly as possible. because obviously that does spoil the grip quite considerably. So Schumacher leading on lap 44, Massa second. Mark Webber is now in third place, with Jenson Button having made his stop, and Webber is back on it again, having just well, he's really picking things up. He's going to have to make another stop soon, but he has done another personal best, a 1:16.812 for Mark Webber. Into the pits comes the championship leader, struggling today, Fernando Alonso.
Well, it's a brand new set of tyres they've saved for this final part of the Grand Prix for Fernando Alonso. Can he make those work? Fisichella's let him off the hook with that mistake, and I'm assuming Alonso will now rejoin in front of him, and has done so. So Alonso's main headache now is, can he keep Kimi Raikkonen at bay? And Massa pits for Ferrari. There was 5.5 seconds between the two Ferraris, so they've backed him up a little bit so they don't interfere with each other's pit stops when they exit the pit lane. It's formation flying from Ferrari. Perfect pit stops. They seem to, you know, it's Ferrari that always, and Renault, I have to say, always getting the pit stops right. Other teams seem to struggle with what should be a formality.
Well, it's a very interesting situation, this, from the championship point of view, as Massa comes back out amongst the traffic. When things settle down after the second round of stops, we're expecting Alonso to be in 6th place. And if it finishes this way, with Michael Schumacher leading and Alonso in 6th place, then that will mean that Schumacher will have got the lead down to just 10 points, with 60 still available from this championship. And it will very definitely be game on. Having looked like a foregone conclusion for Alonso a month ago, he is under very, very serious pressure now. There is the Midlands serving that drive-through penalty, Thiago Monteiro.
This is for position, Scott Speed and Christian Albers, 13th and 14th. We only have 15 runners in this Grand Prix, the 15th of which just did his drive-through speed of a penalty for ignoring blue flags. Michael Schumacher pits from what was really a comfortable lead. A very either brand new or very lightly scrubbed set of Bridgestones going on there. Just a little bit steady away, but he had a comfortable advantage over Massa, who's, is he coming onto the pit straight? He's a long way ahead of him.
Yeah, comfortably ahead, Michael Schumacher, looking for his 4th victory at Hockenheim. Consider he's been racing here for 16 years. It's amazing that he hasn't won here more often, given the level of support. If support equaled success, then he'd have had an awful lot more victories than that. There's last year there was a 6-foot-high effigy of Michael Schumacher in the campsites that you could wind up, and it would play spray champagne to the tune of the Italian national anthem. Jarno Trulli there, just seeing him go past Christian Klien. That's a replay of Trulli's pass for 6th place, taking it away from Christian Klien.
Ralf Schumacher busy battling with Antonio Liuzzi. Ralf then, who's had a new front wing earlier on, then a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Ted has news.
Yeah, down at Ferrari, and Felipe Massa's having big trouble with his Bridgestone tyres at the end of the stint, Martin. Ross Brawn came off the pit wall and missed Michael Schumacher's second stop completely because he was round the back shaving bits off Massa's tyres and having a look at the wear rates on the rear. So that may be critical a bit later on, but Massa in trouble a bit with his tyres.
22 laps to go to the end. That's 22 laps these tyres have got to manage. Scott Speed there, who had a big crash yesterday in qualifying, and he kept his foot in it around turn 1, was offline, and instead of just lifting off the throttle, he kept his foot down and managed to have an even bigger accident in the opening part of the qualifying session.
Just got himself on the marbles there, coming into the stadium section. Was never going to make the corner. It's like travelling on a little ball bearings and trying to turn the car in. Michael Schumacher now just 1.3 seconds ahead of Felipe Massa. It's really difficult to know, to rate their two performances. You don't know how fast they could be going if they had to. But you do get the feeling that Massa was a match, easily a match for Michael Schumacher today, if needs be.
Yeah, not the first time either. Looking at the fastest laps by everybody so far, all but one of the top 5 were Bridgestone cars, with Ralf Schumacher up there, Mark Webber up there as well. Only Kimi Raikkonen on the Michelin's giving them anything to smile about. That's the fastest race laps by any individual driver, that graphic you were looking at a second ago. And at the moment, you'd have to say that Webber is doing a good job in 3rd place. He is currently 11.5 seconds ahead of Jenson Button, so that's not going to be enough to retain third place, obviously, when he makes his final stop of the afternoon, Mark Webber. But it should be enough to keep him in front of Kimi Räikkönen. So Jenson Button still looking very good for a podium here this afternoon. He's currently in 5th place, but behind 2 cars that have got to stop again.
Yes, you have to remember that Räikkönen did that time when he started this race with the equivalent of about 30 miles worth of fuel on board, sort of a lawnmower distance. And that's why he was fast. It's the only man really making Michelin competitive today, I believe, is Jenson Button, actually, who's, although he's 5th at the moment, is still very much on target to finish up 3rd when Webber and Räikkönen make their final stops.
Yeah, Button hasn't had the headline pace then, but he has had the consistency, which is such a vital part of the story. Jarno Trulli's going quickly as well in the Toyota, just 5 seconds behind Jenson Button. He's playing himself into contention to battle with Webber and Räikkönen for 4th and 5th place here this afternoon. Christian Klien from 7th makes his 2nd stop of the afternoon. It's very close in that area. Behind the 2 Ferraris, who are in a different race from everybody else, it is very close indeed. Into the pits comes Ralf Schumacher.
For the 4th time today, he must be feeling quite familiar now when he turns in there. He obviously prefers it to turning into the last corner, but it's a drive-through, it's a new front wing, it's scheduled stops, and Ralf having a nightmare after there.
Yeah, dropped down behind Liuzzi. Now Fisichella in the 2nd Renault is outside the points at the moment, and currently Alonso on target for just 1 point, but there are cars in front of him that have to stop again. Webber makes a stop from 3rd place as he used or slightly scrubbed set of tyres that goes on. Where's he going to feed back in? Can he come back out between Jenson Button and Jarno Trulli?
Toyota's gone through.
So he's behind Trulli, and he's in 6th place.
Yeah, so he must then be behind Button. Button's 3.7 ahead. So what can I tell you? If Mark can get some good pace on in the final few laps, he might just be bothering Button before the end of this Grand Prix. But as it stands at the moment, Michael Schumacher leads on lap 49 by 2 seconds over teammate Felipe Massa. Webber's just pitted from 3rd. That elevates Räikkönen up to 3rd place, but he has to stop again.
Into the pits goes Christian Albers, the 2nd time this afternoon in the Midland. And also in the pits is Scott Speed in the Toro Rosso. He's going to rejoin just as Mark Webber comes blasting through turn 1. There is Webber at the top of the screens, chasing after Jarno Trulli, who made a stop on lap 28. We didn't get how long that stop was, but he went a long way into this Grand Prix. Can't imagine that he's only going to stop that one time. Can't do, surely can't do 39 laps on one set of tyres. So I'm pretty sure that Trulli's going to have to stop again, which Webber will certainly be hoping as well. Important that Trulli doesn't hold him up, though, when he catches him, because Webber needs this phase of the Grand Prix to challenge Jenson Button, who is currently 16 seconds ahead of him, and he's going to need to be about 19 or 20 seconds to comfortably rejoin in front of Webber. It's close at the moment, very close indeed. Just 16 laps to go of the German Grand Prix here at Hockenheim. Kimi Raikkonen was the early leader from pole position with the two Ferraris chasing after him. Jenson Button slow off the line, but was overtaken by the two Renaults off the start, but managed to repass both of them for fourth. He's been a very strong contender here this afternoon. Jarno Trulli, who's worked his way up from the back of the grid, 20th for Trulli, and he carried a very heavy car into the early part of this Grand Prix. He's on the Bridgestone tyre, which, as Ferrari and Williams are proving, is definitely the tyre to be on this afternoon. He's played himself into contention for some strong points here this afternoon. Jenson Button has a great chance of finishing on the podium. He's currently fourth, but Kimi Raikkonen in third place does have to stop again, and Mark Webber has been strong this afternoon. He's just 5 seconds behind Jenson Button, and I think he'll give him a lot of trouble between now and the end of this Grand Prix, the 16 laps that remain. Fernando Alonso, the World Championship leader, has never been in it. He's currently lying in 7th place, which is where he started this Grand Prix, and he's going to take a huge hit on his World Championship lead as a result of this race. It was 17 points the margin going into the Grand Prix. He's currently on target to give away 8 points to Schumacher, reducing the gap to 9 if things stay as they are.
Well, I tell you what, if things stay as they are, Button will not be on the podium. He's got to find some pace. Raikkonen is over a second a lap faster than him, has got to stop again. But behind him, Mark Webber is 3/4 of a second a lap faster than him, and even Alonso too. So Jenson, I don't know what his problems are, but what looked like a very secure podium is not at the moment. He's just done another lap in the late 118s and lost another half second to Webber, who's just 4.4 adrift now. And what we're going to see, surely not a Ferrari looking like it's going to fall off the road. Michael Schumacher heavy braking down into the Sachs hairpin, and I think it's just slow-mo replays. They're not going fast enough. They're so far away from their ultimate limit in the Ferraris. That sort of sounds familiar from a couple of years ago, doesn't it? But, little snatch of the brake. It's that dramatic.
We've seen a mixture of different strategies here this afternoon. Mark Webber ran very long. He went 28 laps into this race, as did Jarno Trulli. Both of them those men qualifying outside the top 10, which meant they could choose their fuel there. They've both made that work for them very well. Only one car 3 stopping here this afternoon, and that is the McLaren of Kimi Raikkonen. Ron Dennis told us he thought most people would 3 stop. It's turned out to be the opposite the case, and in fact they're the only team doing that. Most of the others are stopping twice with a mixture of different first stop times, but certainly the Hondas were the first ones in. The Ferraris and the Renaults came in a little bit later. But the net result of all of this has definitely been a swing in performance terms, away from Renault at the front towards Ferrari, who now clearly have the fastest car and tyre package as we go through the second half of this Grand Prix season. And it's going to need some kind of big response from Renault now if they're going to hold on to their lead in the Drivers' World Championship. They're only 21 points clear of Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship, and there's an awful lot still to happen there in the 6 races which remain this year. This championship is definitely going to be very lively.
Well, Jenson's heading for 5th now. I'd be interested to talk to the team. Looks like little lights there for the refueling man to probably know that when the wheels are on and when the fuel is complete. I thought they weren't allowed to do that. Certainly I don't think they're allowed to have beeps in the helmet to get the refuelers to pull off, but it looked like a warning system to allow the refueler to know when all the wheels are on probably.
Ferrari's very much controlling their pace at the moment. Who's that? That's Klein and Ralf Schumacher, I believe. Yep, that's a pass by Ralf Schumacher on Klein for 9th place. He's had a scruffy afternoon, Ralf Schumacher, with a collision with David Coulthard. That's for 10th place. Klein is the next car that Ralf Schumacher will come up on. But as I say, he's had a scruffy afternoon. Collision with David Coulthard, funnily enough, on the opening lap. And yesterday, a collision with Pedro de la Rosa in qualifying.
And
Coulthard resisting.
Defending massively against Antonio Liuzzi, his teammate for parts of last year, and Liuzzi's up the inside, so flat-out right-hander. Will DC try and go around the outside? No, he doesn't, and he's lapping very slowly now in the 19s, so some kind of problem out there for David Coulthard, but didn't seem too ready to give up that position, but he's falling away quickly, and it looks like Red Bull, having looked so fast through free practice and qualifying, are heading for no points this afternoon. The Ferraris are now back into the 119s. There'll be cobwebs on the side of it if they go much slower. And this then is a replay of Liuzzi drilling Coulthard in the flat right out the back. And what would be more interesting is the replay of DC realising that Turnio was... Now this is going to be interesting. McLaren in for this stop, Ted.
Exactly, and it's going to be interesting because he's going to feed back right into the path of the Renaults of Alonso and Fisichella. Very tight. It's a very quick stop. Very good work by McLaren. Where's he going then? Where are the Renaults?
Well, Ted, he's got to watch out for Webber, who's coming down the main straight now. Mark Webber in the Williams. Where is he going to come out, Kimi Räikkönen? There they are. You can see Räikkönen on the left, Webber on the right. Who's going to get it into the corner? Webber's gone round the outside, Räikkönen resists, they're very close. Webber's keeping his foot in though, and Räikkönen takes the place, and that is 5th place. Very brave stuff by Kimi Räikkönen, and it's disappointing for Mark Webber, who was catching Jenson Button and who has driven so well all afternoon. But there you go, McLaren made that one work for him, didn't they? Fantastic by Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah, it's 4th place now, so 4th and 5th and this was great driving by both of them. Neither wanting to give, both maximising what they had available to them, but in the end Räikkönen had the better line coming down the inside, and now Button's under pressure. Räikkönen will drag Webber towards Button, and he's going to have a mirror full of 2 cars trying to spoil his podium chance.
Yep, so they're just a couple of seconds behind Jenson Button, who is 3rd, Räikkönen 4th, Webber then down to 5th place after all that hard work. Alonso 6th, ahead of teammate Fisichella by 1.5 seconds, and Jarno Trulli in 8th place at the moment. These positions have changed so much this afternoon, with overtaking, with fueling strategies, and various other things as well. Ralf Schumacher unlapping himself from the Ferrari.
And Massa just getting out of the way, saying, you know, go, don't give me any trouble. I'm going to be right over here. You take the racing line, because all I'm doing this afternoon is rear gunner for your brother, and he seems to be doing just fine. Go and enjoy yourself.
Very experienced brothers they are too. 150 Grand Prix now that the 2 Schumacher brothers have started on the same grid. By far the most any brothers have done in Formula 1 history. And there is another look at how Ralph unlapped himself on a day when you'd have to say Toyota perhaps feel they might have done a bit better. If Trulli can make it from 20th up to 8th and score a point, then Ralf Schumacher, starting in 8th place on the grid, could quite potentially, on the Bridgestone tyre, have been up there troubling Button, Webber and Räikkönen for a podium this afternoon.
Räikkönen goes the fastest of anybody in any lap of this Grand Prix in the middle sector, and that is why he's beginning to stare at the gearbox of the Honda of Jenson Button, and I have a feeling Button's going to be absolutely defenceless when he gets there in probably a lap's time. Räikkönen, who was massive in that last corner in qualifying to snatch pole, and I think it confirms what we'd heard, that there were some refueling problems. So Räikkönen with an unrealistic pole position in many respects, but he's done the best with it he could in the race. Remember, he lost 8 seconds in one of the pit stops too with a sticky right rear wheel, and he's now absolutely on Button.
Well, if it stays like this for Fernando Alonso, it'll be his worst finish for 18 races, and at a very bad moment indeed, as now Räikkönen attacks Jenson Button, and it looks like a podium place beckons for Kimi Räikkönen. He's got better drive than Button, who's been struggling for pace the last few laps. They're side by side. They almost touch wheels through the fast right-hander. Button's got the line for the inside, but he just can't make it go. He can't make it work. He couldn't go there on the brakes, and Räikkönen takes the final podium place from Jenson Button. Look at it again.
Some great skill going on out there, and how about that for 160 miles an hour side by side through a 70-degree right-hander, and Jenson had to go in early to defend, and Kimi said, okay, I'll do it on the way out then. Gets himself the racing line and enough traction to beat Button down there, as Ralf Schumacher now tries to unlap himself against Michael. Ralf is down in 10th place after 4 pit stops.
Some great overtaking here at Hockenheim. Mark Webber has had a very slow middle sector on this lap, a full 11 seconds slower. He's been passed by Alonso. Webber is in trouble out there. He's going backwards through the field. This is good news for Alonso, who moves up to 5th place, taking yet another important point away from what the damage that Schumacher's going to do to him. What's happened to Webber? He's down to 8th. Sounds terrible. The engine sounds awful.
There's a sick Webber gone down the pit straight. We haven't seen it on screen, but it was sounding very, very rough. So Webber will be back in 8th place now. And it's Alonso who, if he can get stuck in now, he might just be troubling Jenson Button for that 4th place.
Williams haven't scored any points for 6 races, and Mark Webber has not finished 7 times this year, 5 of them for technical reason. It looks as though he's going to have another technical DNF here in Germany. He'll be so frustrated after a podium-worthy drive by the Australian. At the moment, he's in that 8th position, but Christian Klein is catching him fast for the final point here this afternoon. Looks like Webber's going to go away empty-handed. There he is. Listen. Well, I got into trouble.
Probably won't make it back, Mark. Just drive back on low revs. If you have to stop, stop near a fire marshal, because it'll be very hot underneath. Just drive back to the pits. If you don't make it, stop near a fire marshal.
Yeah, white flags waving for a slow car. Mark Webber, wise enough to realise the leaders are coming up, so just scampers onto a bit of runoff area. And the advice there is, especially if the thing is running lean or there's some kind of ignition issue, then they do get incredibly hot. Sometimes we see the exhaust pipes glowing almost white hot as Massa laps the Midland there. And Ted is down at Williams with news.
Yeah, and they have secured a place. They've cleared out the mechanics and the T-car, and they've made a shape, a space in the garage for Mark Webber. Chief mechanic Carl Gaydon is just standing in the pit lane. I can see him now looking towards the end of the pit lane, expecting Mark to come by. But the danger there is, I think you heard Sam Michaels say on the radio that everything is very hot and he could well catch fire. So all the mechanics standing by with fire extinguishers.
Yeah, it's certainly, we always have done it and always will do it, but what you do is you drive an incredibly hot car back and park it between the refueling rigs and anything else that sits in your pit garage. But that's about to happen again for Mark Webber.
Well, there it goes. Well, it's the 12th retirement for Williams so far this season. It really is a very poor reliability record, and it's the 4th time that both cars have retired from a Grand Prix. By far the worst reliability record of any Formula One team. And only Super Aguri has done fewer race laps than Williams this season. They really need to sort that out, especially when the performance is so strong, as it was here this weekend.
Good forethought there by the Williams team. Obviously from the data acquisition, they'll know the nature of the problem that Webber had. And this then is Ralf Schumacher unlapping himself against Michael, presumably, down into the hairpin. And of course, Michael not in the least bit bothered to fight that one.
So instead of champagne spraying for Mark Webber on the podium, it's fire extinguisher spraying down in the pits 7 laps before the end of this Grand Prix. A tough end to what was a terrific drive. Schumacher leading by 2.5 seconds from Massa. And they're taking it easy, really, on the run down to the finish. Raikkonen then is 3rd, having taken that place away from Jenson Button, who was strong in the opening half of the Grand Prix, but faded in the final quarter. There is Alonso with Fisichella right behind him, and Alonso's obviously had a slow lap, and it looks like Trulli is right up behind him as well. And this is why, off the racetrack goes Fernando Alonso, just gathers it up, but that's going to make for an intriguing final 6 laps for him.
Trulli's with him for position too, don't forget. So Alonso was catching Button very nicely and got all leery coming, and he did so well to hang on to that. That could have been a big spear right into the wall. And luckily, he's got friendly fire behind him in the form of his teammate. And his teammate's got to do a great job of holding off former Renault driver Jarno Trulli now, because Alonso has put himself badly under pressure with that and taken the pressure off Button. They're now 9 seconds behind Button. Alonso will have extremely dirty tyres. You lose a bit of temperature and pressure as well as you're trying to bring them back into play. Often can take a full lap, but Alonso now up and running again. That could have been a critical error and could so easily have been in the wall.
And could easily have cost him the 4 World Championship points he's on target for, which will minimise the damage. It'll mean the margin will be 11 points between him and Schumacher as we move to Hungary next weekend, where we're being told, rumours going around the paddock, that Renault have been informed they will be able to reinstate the mass damper system on their car, which clearly had an important role to play in making them competitive. There is Pat Simmons having a pretty gloomy weekend generally. But if that is the case, that they're able to reinstate the mass damper system, it'll be interesting to see whether that changes their competitiveness as much as it appears it would. Alonso then just in front of Fisichella with Trulli third. The battle for 5th, 6th and 7th places. Christian Klien looks like he's on target for a World Championship point in 8th for Red Bull, to give them something from a weekend in which they showed a lot of speed throughout free practice.
Right, what can Jarno Trulli do about this? He actually had a steady lap behind the two Renaults, where they just got hooked up a little bit in the dirt and dust, being brought back onto the racetrack by Fernando Alonso. But Alonso, well, he certainly let Jenson Button off the hook with that error. So Button looks like he might now just hang on to 4th place at least. So the final phase of the Grand Prix, the Honda not working too well, but Jenson making the most of it.
On board with Michael Schumacher, looking to give Bridgestone their 100th Grand Prix victory. They've been in the sport for 10 years. A few of those, they were the sole tyre supplier, but it's been a tough competition for Michelin in the last few years. Speaking of Michelin, Ted Kravitz has some news for us.
Yeah, and this is the reason why Renault are so slow. They've been blistering their rear tyres. I don't know if you can see now, they've left the Michelins out with the back of the Renault garage to show absolutely everybody the bits of rubber chunks that's been eaten out of the rear tyres of Giancarlo Fisichella and Fernando Alonso. That's why they had the oversteer, Martin. That's why we saw them taking off front wing. But Renault clearly not happy about this, that Michelin have just been giving them a tyre they thought was going to be great for the race, but it's been blistering very badly, and that's what's been their problem.
That's a bit of a PR statement, isn't it? Leaving them out the back for people like Ted and other eagle-eyed observers to see. Certainly it's been a factor here in Hockenheim over the years. Last year, if you remember, Michael Schumacher had really bad blistering of his rear tyres, one of the reasons he wasn't competitive. And funnily enough, Alonso and Renault the year before that, in 2004, that was the problem then for them. So it seems to be the case again this year. Mind you, you'd have to say they haven't been quick all weekend, really, even over a single lap in qualifying.
That's a fact. At the moment, they're 34 seconds behind. They were 42 behind the lead, but as we know, Ferrari are just coasting, really. And that's the position changes since the start of the race. You can see Jarno Trulli up 13 places because he had to start at the back after an engine change. Liuzzi up 6 to P10. Klien up 4 to hopefully steal a World Championship point to get his season underway and defend his position, really, to hope to be in the Red Bull team for next year. With the new Adrian Newey car, could well be a smart place to be.
Yeah, it's looking increasingly likely they're going to have to run the Ferrari engine again next year. They have a 2-year contract with the Red Bull Racing team. There was an attempt, certainly, by the team to try and move that on to Toro Rosso, see if they could run the Renault customer engines next year. But Jean Todt, the boss of Ferrari, has firmly rebuffed any such suggestions. And, well, we'll see what happens next year for Red Bull Racing with that Adrian Newey design car. But nevertheless, Martin, it is a fact that no Ferrari customer team has ever won a Grand Prix.
Well, if you're going to have to choose an engine, they're going to freeze the development year by year, which is what they're talking to do, and then you might as well have the one that won the World Championship. And the crowd beginning to realise this is a cakewalk for Michael Schumacher. And subject to some bizarre happenings, Schumacher has comfortably got this where he needs it. And he can thank also Massa, Raikkonen and Button for helping him dent Alonso's World Championship chances massively this afternoon.
Yeah, Alonso said on Friday he didn't expect a McLaren to finish between him and the Ferraris, but in fact a McLaren and a Honda are going to finish between him and the Ferraris. It means he's going to drop 6 points to Michael Schumacher. With still 60 available in the rest of the championship, the margin will be 11 points only. And it's like 1998, really. Similar situation. Michael Schumacher, after 11 races, was 15 points behind Mika Häkkinen, but he managed to take that championship down to the wire, the final Grand Prix. On that occasion, he lost out. He's not a specialist, really, Michael, at taking championships in final races. He doesn't really like, doesn't seem to have liked them over the years, but I think Alonso will be praying the championship goes down to the final race at the rate that Michael's taking points off him at the moment. He's coming through to start his final lap of the 67 here at Hockenheim. Good crowd spotted around the racetrack, most of them wearing Ferrari red and carrying German flags. And it is amazing, really, isn't it, all the success that Schumacher's had, that he's only won here 3 times before. This will only be his 4th victory in Hockenheim.
This will make them scratch their heads on the Renault pit wall. Fernando Alonso, his fastest first sector of the Grand Prix so far on the last lap, but 1. Fernando Alonso, fastest second sector of the Grand Prix so far, right at the end of the race. And then he caps that with a 1:17.2, comfortably his fastest lap of the Grand Prix by some 0.4 of a second. What's that all about?
Well, I'll tell you what it's about. It's about he's also 0.9 of a second then slower. His best lap for this race is 0.9 slower than Michael Schumacher's best lap of this race. And that is absolutely a story of Ferrari domination. It's not uncommon for people to set fast laps at the end. Some kind of statement involved, maybe, who knows, but completely outclassed by Ferrari here this afternoon.
But he's fighting for a world championship, and the team are rightly surely going to say, well, hang on, why didn't you do that earlier in the Grand Prix? Why did that suddenly come out when the track is full of marbles and looking a bit risky?
Michael Schumacher then coming through to collect the checkered flag. His 3rd win in a row in this 2006 World Championship. It's yet another Ferrari 1-2 with Felipe Massa right behind him, who's going to collect his 4th podium of the season. And here comes Kimi Räikkönen, number 5 podium for him. A dogged drive, really, after a compromised strategy early on. He had a sticking wheel nut in a pit stop. Looked like it had cost him the podium chance. But he came through to overtake Jenson Button, who finishes in 4th place, for some welcome points for him and Honda. Fernando Alonso, the championship leader, finishes 5th. Fisichella is 6th, and 7th is Jarno Trulli, and we'll have Christian Klien coming through in a moment. Well, when Michael Schumacher gets back to the pits, we'll have the driver of the day and then the podium celebrations.
Fantastic job, Michael, fantastic job. Well done, well done. This championship's back in our hands now. We win the last 6 races, we win the championship. Fantastic drive, well done.
Guys, I can't believe that we won this fantastic for us this weekend. I mean, so great. Fantastic job from Felipe to push pretty hard in the beginning. Superb car, superb tyres, everything is just fantastic. Thank you guys, great job.
There you go, confirmation of the result. A very happy Michael Schumacher over the team radio, congratulating everybody, in the significance not lost on Chris Dyer, his race engineer, that now it's about winning the races. It doesn't matter what Alonso does, it's back in Ferrari's hands. Before this Grand Prix, Alonso could have afforded to finish 2nd behind Michael Schumacher at every race and still win the title. That is no longer the case. With 6 rounds to go and 11 points to margin, if Michael wins every race, there's nothing Alonso can do about it. He'll take the title off him. Mind you, it's quite a tall order, winning every race, isn't it? Win every one of the last 6. That's all you've got to do, Michael.
Well, he's won the last 3, so the omens are good.
Back to Hockenheim, where Fernando Alonso has hit the 100 points for the year mark, but the bad news for him is that Michael Schumacher has taken a big bite out of his championship lead. It's just 11 points now. Felipe Massa moves up to 3rd place in the championship, ahead of Giancarlo Fisichella and Kimi Raikkonen, who finished on the podium today behind the 2 Ferraris, also moves up in the championship. Jenson Button has had a strong afternoon, well, strong first half anyway. He looked like he was good for a podium. Faded slightly towards the end of the race and was passed by Raikkonen, so he finishes 4th. Alonso down in 5th, 6th Fisichella, 7th Trulli from 20th on the grid, and 8th Christian Klien. Who's your driver of the day?
Well, of the drivers that finished, Kimi Raikkonen, no doubt about it. I thought he did a great job. He did all he could do, and I think it's now more and more certain that they had some kind of refueling problem yesterday. I don't think they would have chosen that strategy. If they did, it was a bit bizarre. Of the drivers that didn't finish, clearly it was Mark Webber. He was on for a great result today and did everything absolutely right. So Michael Schumacher celebrating then with Felipe Massa, barely a bead of sweat between them because nobody challenged them today.
Yeah, great drive by Webber, who certainly could have finished on the podium and 4th at worst, but unfortunately, once again, the Williams Cosworth package letting him down, sadly. That's his 8th retirement of the year, 6th one for technical reasons. Schumacher making a little joke about the rear of the McLaren there. But significantly, it's not just the Drivers' Championship that's now under threat. Renault are just 10 points clear of Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. And it looks like Kimi's a bit concerned about the smoke coming out the back of that McLaren. Can't see any smoke.
No, and the chimneys that help extract the air from behind the radiators. But Michael will be very happy to see Kimi there. Just what he needed, isn't it? That's not too successful, did it?
Now, this is a significant moment. That's Nick Shorrock on the right, who's in charge of Michelin's competition department, talking with Flavio Briatore on the left. And they've had quite a lot of meetings throughout the course of this weekend about where they're going for the future of this. There's only 6 more races, of course, before Michelin pull out of Formula 1. And both Renault and Michelin desperate to go out with a championship. But they had a lot of meetings, and they believe they're on the right track. They just have lost a little bit of focus in the last couple of races. Bridgestone and Ferrari have definitely taken the upper hand. And crucially, Michael Schumacher now knows that if he has any more weekends like this, obviously that's a huge bonus, but he just has to go out there and try and win the races as he has the last 3. And if he does that, there's nothing Alonso can do about it. The championship will go away from him. That wasn't the case before this weekend. Alonso could quite happily have finished 2nd everywhere and still won the title with the point system as it is in Formula 1 these days. That's no longer the case, and that's why this has been such a turning point weekend for Ferrari and Michael Schumacher.
Well, Renault have only got 4 days to regroup because right now, from what I can see, Michael Schumacher is the favourite to take the World Championship. The kind of performance, and if you look at their performance line, and they lost, what was it, 17 points to Renault in the first 3 races of the Grand Prix season. Now Michael's just 11 behind, having scored a hat-trick of wins today, and they just seem like they've got everything there. And Massa, crucially, has come into play and is doing exactly the job asked of him to inflict further pain.
Win number 89 of his incredible career for Michael Schumacher, and only his 4th here at Hockenheim. Well, Michael Schumacher has still not made a decision, if you believe those around him, about what he wants to do for the future. And one wonders if he wins this World Championship, whether he'd consider that go out on a high or whether he'd do another year next year. This now seems increasingly likely that Kimi Raikkonen will be a Ferrari driver next year. Does Schumacher want to spend a year with him? Who knows? It's another pot to add to his collection. He's won over 1 in 3 of the races he's entered, Michael Schumacher, a spectacular record. And Paolo Martinelli, who's responsible for the engine department at Ferrari, collects the Constructors' Trophy. What's your bet with Schumacher? What do you think he's feeling at the moment?
Well, why would he want to give up standing up there with his adoring public looking on? He's got to fancy trimming up Raikkonen, as he knows the Ferrari team so well. And I wonder what his motivation is to stop, really.
Well, you never know what goes on in the family. Maybe there's some pressure there. Who knows? But we'll find out at Monza in the middle of September what Schumacher's going to do and what Raikkonen's going to do. Right now he's going to collect the trophy for 3rd place after a good drive, difficult strategy. They managed to make it work for them though. The best possible result under the circumstances, with Ferrari just so dominant here this afternoon. Well, there's no question that here in Hockenheim, Renault fell flat and Michael Schumacher dominated, and the force is with Michael.
kommentieren dürfen. Die Variante, die da noch viel natürlich auch